Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to today's HDI webinar, 4 Building Blocks to Modernize the Service Desk. Today's webinar is brought to you by EasyVista, and there's a link to their website right in the Attachments tab on your BrightTalk window. You can connect with HDI on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on our community site, HDI Connect. And please subscribe to our podcast, which is called Spotcast, on iTunes or SoundCloud. HDI, smarter service, better business. We have just a few announcements before we start. I'm Roy Atkinson, the Senior Writer Analyst for HDI. And if you're experiencing any problems today, please refresh your browser if the slides are not advancing for you. And of course, if you don't have your computer unmuted, you're not hearing me right now. You can participate in the Q&A session by asking questions at any time during the webcast, and they'll be answered during the Q&A session toward the end of the webcast. You can download the slides from today's webcast by using the Attachments tab on your BrightTalk screen, and be sure to check out the links you'll find in there as well. There will be an audience poll, and you can respond to the poll by going to the Vote tab below the presentation window. Remember that today's webinar will be available on demand shortly after the completion of this live webcast, and you'll receive an email reminder that it's available. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event. With us today is John Prestridge, CMO and Senior VP of North America at EasyVista, an accomplished marketing and product strategist focused on customer needs. He helps drive product innovation and market development within the IT service management software industry to support the digital transformation of enterprise companies. He's a firm believer that ITSM 2.0 is a critical path for companies transitioning to the digital workspace. John has broad expertise in the technology shaping the future workplace, including service management, cloud computing, application virtualization, mobility, intelligent automation, and compliance. So welcome, John.
Thank you, Roy.
So before we get started on why we're going to modernize, I'm going to ask a question. So go to the Vote tab on your BrightTalk window, and I'm going to launch a poll here. And it's a very general question. We'd just like to get a feel for where you are in your service desk life cycle. And the question is, when was the last time you assessed your service desk operations? And that includes the people, the process, and the technology. Was it less than a year ago, more than a year but less than 3 years ago, 3 to 5 years ago, or I have no idea? So let's see how your responses go for that. We're going to keep the poll open for about another half a minute or so. When was the last time you assessed your service desk operations? Could be anywhere up to 5 years, or I have no idea. It's before my time would be a good answer there, I guess. Something like that. All right, good response rate coming in. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the votes now, and we'll see what the final tallies look like. Wow, good. This is terrific. Less than 1 year ago, about 45% of you answered. 47% with the final tally. More than a year, but less than 3 years ago, 18%. 3 to 5 years ago, 6%. And I have no idea, 30%. So either it's before your time, or you just didn't know what was going on, or you weren't in the loop. So that's great. A good portion of you have done this recently. So that's an excellent, excellent result. So let's talk a little bit about why the time is now when you have to think about modernization. First of all, as you know, technology is now the foundation of businesses. It doesn't really matter what your business is. Most businesses really have become very dependent on technologies of all sorts, whether it's websites, e-commerce, internal networks, different devices feeding information into systems, whatever it happens to be. The technology is the foundation of business more and more, And of course, now we're talking about digital transformation, which is how to really increase that and keep that trend going. So more technology is coming every day. Second reason, the increasing responsibilities of support, and I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. If your service desk is busy, just wait a minute, it'll get busier, basically is the message here, for lots of reasons. The coming of automation and artificial intelligence. Well, we all know this is coming. It's here. We'll be talking more about that during today's webinar and why you should be thinking about that if you're not, and what it can do to help us, but what the consequences are as well. So that's another reason to be thinking about modernization. The growth of enterprise service management. So not just focused on IT, but service management across the entire organization is becoming increasingly important and much more common than it was. So lots of reasons to modernize. And speaking of enterprise service management, there's a little graph from our research that shows you that an awful lot of organizations, if they're not doing it now, are certainly thinking about it, even though 41% said, well, we're not really going to do that. Guess what? I would wager that that's going to change in another year or two. So, but you can see that large portions of organizations really are using service management across the entire enterprise. So it's an important concept. So demand for support keeps increasing. This is results from our just released 2019 Technology and Operations report. And what it tells us is not very different from previous years, although the percentage of organizations that said that the demand for support was up. The volume of tickets was up again, 68%. That's one of the higher percentages that we've had in the last 10 years. But this is an ongoing trend year over year. At least half and usually more than half of organizations say that the volume has increased. So the demand for support keeps going up. And it is not going away anytime soon, simply because there are more customers, more systems, more devices, more of everything. As I said earlier, technology becoming more and more the foundation of the business, and that technology has to be supported. And while we'd like to think that people don't have to use support to get help, they do, for lots of reasons. Sometimes it's just not knowing what to do. Sometimes it's because they don't have the ability to fix something or change something. They don't have that authority, or because there's not a good self-help system, and we'll certainly talk about that today. And only 10% of organizations said that their volume decreased, which is also pretty on par with previous years. So demand for support just keeps increasing. And John, you have something to say about that as well.
Sure, Roy. I reiterate what you were saying, that when we talk to organizations today, I don't talk to many that don't see an increase in demand on the support organization. Digital transformation, like you said, is driving such a change in how companies want to do business, and the IT organization and support in specific are very important components of that. So I think it's a very important time for IT organizations to look at modernizing their service desk and really take a lead on how to support this digital transformation. What I have on the screen here is a quote from a Gartner report. By 2022, 85% of customer service interactions will start with self-service. Now, you can take customers as external customers. Also, we have to think of employees as customers as well. And I think what we see is with digital transformation, organizations are moving to the first stop being self-service. And I know that means a lot, and IT's been talking about self-service for a while, and actually we haven't had great success at delivering a great self-service experience for our employees or our external customers. But what we see is the trend is you have to be successful. We'll talk a little bit about prioritization in a few slides, but it's very important that every organization, support the transformation needed on the service desk to start with self-service. If we go to the next slide here. For some reason, it's not showing.
There we go.
There we go. All right. So when we look at the transformation that needs to happen, this is a diagram I'm talking about shift left, and a lot of you have probably heard the concept. It's really about how do we shift service to reduce cost in the organization and provide a better experience. This one's more IT oriented, but the example I use when I'm talking to organizations, if you want to think about digital transformation and how shift left works, think about the banking industry. It's something well understood. Remember 10 years ago where you did all your transactions at a branch, usually. You walk in, the teller was there. Very expensive model to provide support to their customers. Then they moved to ATMs, was introduced, and trying to drive people to go from a teller, drive to an ATM, do your banking there, at least a person's not involved. It's automated. Then they drove you to online banking, which was an even less expensive model that you can access from the internet. Now they want mobile banking where you have your bank in your pocket. That's true digital transformation and a shift left strategy because they're shifting those costs from what costs $20-something to walk up to a teller to 20 cents to do a mobile banking transaction. So they're really driving costs out of the organization, and we're saying that IT needs to do the same thing. Drive those costs out by providing more shift left support capability, and it starts with self-service. And we'll be talking a lot about the components that have to be there, the building blocks for modernizing the service desk so you can actually execute on this shift left strategy today. And there's just a little bit preview to some of the things we're talking about. It really is about omni-channel self-service support, being able to provide support from anywhere, because really self-service is not a place people should go. So we started out with self-service portals, and that's really what a lot of organizations still push, but it's ineffective because people have to know where to go, and sometimes the portals get outdated, and it's really tough. It really needs to be omni-channel. So wherever I'm working and I need to get service, I should be able to access it easily from wherever that is. So really, we have to rethink how we provide self-service. Also, knowledge is so important. It is one of the building blocks that we're going to focus on today, and having that knowledge that's accessible and easy to use for people that can really guide them through the solutions that they need is so important. And then, of course, AI augmentation is another area we're going to talk about today, because AI is real. And if you think about if you've used Uber or any consumer-oriented apps that you have, the value that they provide you is really driven through AI augmentation, knowing where you're at, remembering the things that you've done in the past, and it really can augment the experience and make the self-service experience really work for an individual. Just think about what Netflix has done with movie watching and the AI that they use to guide you to additional movies or programs to watch based on your individual, very personalized experience. Think about support being the same way, being able to deliver a self-service support experience based on the assets that they already have, or based on the location that they work. Those are the kinds of things that AI can really help us get to, but are part of the building blocks. And we'll talk about kind of the order that you really need to go through this modernization effort to be successful in today's webinar. I'll hand it back over to you, Roy.
Thanks, John. That's okay. I got it. There we go. I got it. So, first building block, knowledge management. And John mentioned there how knowledge management is key for our being able to function and talk about shift left successfully and all of that. But it's also essential for AI. Let's talk about even not AI, but advanced technologies like chatbots. Many chatbots are knowledge-driven, right? You've got to have organized knowledge to feed into the systems that you're putting in place, and that includes artificial intelligence. AI, the more knowledge and data get fed into artificial intelligence, the better it gets. Right, when you think about all those CAPTCHA and reCAPTCHA graphics that click on all the traffic lights in this. What you're doing is teaching AI how to drive autonomous vehicles. What does a traffic light look like? What does a bicycle look like? What does a sidewalk look like? And so we're feeding knowledge into those systems all the time. So in order to be effective, you've got to have your knowledge ducks in a row, as it were. You've got to know where your knowledge is, and you've got to make sure that it's current and accessible, whether it's to the people who are trying to do self-service or to the technology that's trying to help them do self-service. So knowledge management is really, really key. In addition to that, shortens the time to proficiency. What we know from years of experience teaching knowledge management at HDI is that new agents and analysts that come into the organization can ramp up much more rapidly if there's good knowledge available to them. They can look things up, they can learn things much faster if there's a good knowledge management system. It expedites resolution. Why? Because, well, you might not have to think through every step that somebody has to go through. It might be already documented. You might be able to help them by sharing a link to a download or something like that if it's in your knowledge base. And so there's lots of ways that it speeds up resolution of incidents and fulfillment of requests. And it increases consistency. One of the things that any customer service or technical support organization has to deal with is, you connect with analyst A and get one answer. You connect with analyst B, get a different answer. And sometimes what you wind up is people shopping around, calling back to get their favorite person on the phone because they like that answer better. That's not really effective for the organization. And it's not good because what's the right answer? Somebody's got to know. So having that consistency across the responses that people get is very, very important. Consistency is one of the biggest elements in providing a good customer experience. And let's face it, if you go to a restaurant and you have a really enjoyable meal and then you tell your friend, hey, you should go to that restaurant, and they have a terrible meal, that's because it's inconsistent, right? Their food wasn't good, yours was. So consistency is a very strong element of customer experience. John?
Yeah, so like Roy said, we really see knowledge as the foundation for everything because there's a lot of steps to modernizing the service desk. We talked about AI. We talked about omni-channel self-service in general. All of it starts with knowledge. And, when we mention knowledge management, most people think about the way we've tried to manage knowledge for the past 10 years. And that's the left side of this PowerPoint here is kind of like, if we take an IP phone as an example, you can have a very long knowledge article written wiki style or whatever knowledge management system you have. You can have this very long document that has everything that you would want to know about an IP phone. And that's generally the way knowledge has been done in the past, is around articles. And they're usually written, unfortunately, from a technical perspective. And then you put those to end users, and what happens if they go to that, finding a simple answer can take too long, and they will abandon the process because all I want to do is make a video call, and I can't remember how to do it. That makes it difficult to find it exactly in this document. So, and you can use thousands of examples of where articles or long-form articles are not good. And so we need to really rethink how we deliver knowledge and how we manage knowledge, and to be more of a guided knowledge experience. And on the right is an example. So would you rather go to a long-form article, or would you rather land on a page that has easy navigation so I can quickly get the key things that people will want to know about an IP phone, and from there directly to the solution? So really quickly. So it's about creating a guided experience based on the context. So this first screen should be the model of the phone I have, because it should be contextual to me. That's where knowledge becomes more intelligent. So the knowledge is brought to you from in a personalized standpoint. It's more contextual. and it's accessible from anywhere. So knowledge, you shouldn't have to go to the knowledge management system and look for it. It should be available from anywhere through search, through virtual agents or whatever, and drive you to this guided experience. So it's really about rethinking knowledge to be, more relevant, contextual, and guided. It is very important as a foundation so that we can layer on top of the AI to provide a better experience, and then be able to make to syndicate that knowledge in an omni-channel way so that it can be accessible from anywhere. So knowledge is the foundation. So when we think about knowledge-centric self-service, and in the middle I've got self-help as our product, but it really is any knowledge management system that allows you to build out these guided knowledge flows. And you can see there's tons of examples of where knowledge can be aggregated to solve different areas. It might be instructional, it could be reference material, it can be resources that your employees or customers use, it could be informational, it could be operational. So there's a lot of pockets of knowledge in the organization that can drive benefit. On the IT service desk, it's usually instructional around troubleshooting or task-oriented, guiding people to how to reset your password and things like that. But there's tons of application for providing knowledge to drive value in your organization. The keys to it is that the knowledge management system should be built with, reusable multimedia knowledge pieces, right? So there's small assets, whether it's a video, it's a graphic visual, it's some instructions, and you actually can build these pieces into flows and guide people through the process, rather than having one long-form article. Because the way the flow may work, it may ask the user a question and then direct it to different ways to present the information. So you can really create a more targeted solution for your end users. And it's key that it's bite-sized, not written to be bite-sized and consumable, not long form. So it's about rethinking your knowledge and making it more bite-sized and actionable for the person that's accessing it. And then it has to be accessible through different channels. We've talked about that, whether it's virtual agents, through websites, applications, or through AI technologies. Once you have that knowledge documented, then it's really about making it available everywhere.
Great, thanks, John. I'm going to back up one here. There we go. So the second building block is self-help, which John already mentioned. Enabled by good knowledge management, right? Let's assume that we've gone through the exercises that we need to go through and we have the technology we need to provide good self-help. And I'm seeing a question, by the way, John. It says, one challenge we found is that customers would prefer calling or stopping by the help desk to have us hold their hand through issue resolution rather than having to go to a self-help portal and looking up the answer on their own. I think that is at the crux of what we're talking about a lot today. And as John, as you mentioned, having people go to a portal might not be the correct solution, right? And we're gonna address that question during the rest of this webinar, but we'll come back to that. So enabled by good knowledge management and good tools, self-help should be there. What we found in some recent research is that the highest reason to offer self-help and self-service is because people want it. At the same time, some of you have had issues in the past getting good user adoption. And so somewhere in between there's a disconnect. The users want it, but you have to provide it in a way that's accessible to them and that works in their flow. And that's really the crux of what John and I are discussing here. Provides help when and where needed. That's good self-help. So I don't have to go to a destination necessarily. I can get it in the context of what I'm doing. That's a difference between having a portal and having assisted self-help. And John will discuss that type of technology as we go forward here. So in this graph, which is also from our 2019 reports, or one of the annual reports that we do, we talked earlier about the increase in volumes in most service desks, 68%, and the decrease in only some. And so we ask you, why does this happen? And as I mentioned, the number of applications, the number of customers, the number of devices they support, all of that stuff has caused an increase on the left side. So what's driving the decrease that's on the right side? And what we see is that the number 1 and 2 reasons for decreases cited were self-help and a knowledge base. So there you go. There's the proof that this actually works. Those organizations that have succeeded in decreasing the volume that's hitting their service desk have done so. Top 2 reasons, self-help and knowledge base, right? And those 2 are joined at the hip. Can't have one without the other. Well, you can have knowledge base without self-help, but that would be kind of fruitless. What you really want to do is have a good knowledge base and then provide excellent self-help. And you can see the other reasons there as well. But those are the top reasons why some organizations have been able to decrease their volume in an age of increasing demand. Not a usual thing to do. So here we go, John. This is, I think, addressing that question that I pointed out before.
Right. So we'll just take a quick look at, so many ask, what is self-help? From a technology implementation perspective, what does that mean? It's fairly simple. How we determine it, how we define it. Number 1, it's about building out those dynamic knowledge experiences. So you need a system that allows you to take your knowledge, break it into bite-sized pieces, and then be able to have a workflow style delivery of that knowledge based on the context of the user. So that's what's important. That's the difference in the way we've managed knowledge in the past, the way we need to manage it in the future, is it really needs to be adaptive to the person and the problem, the answer you're trying to provide, and be able to interact with a person during the knowledge session. So when someone's looking for an answer, it needs to be able to possibly ask questions and get qualifying information so that it can direct them to the knowledge that's actually going to solve the problem. The problem with knowledge in the past and self-service is we created too many dead ends. So people would go to the knowledge, not find an answer. It don't take many times of doing that before you don't come back, and it's a lot easier to walk over to the service desk or pick up the phone. And this is a cultural change issue. You need to really provide self-service that works and then train people how to use it and get them to use it, and then they will start adopting it. So the first step is create those knowledge experiences, not knowledge articles, more contextual. Then syndicate it. Deliver that knowledge everywhere. Make it available wherever people work, whether it's in their application that they're working in. Maybe it's inside Salesforce. They're working in Salesforce every day. Maybe there's a button in there that allows them to access the knowledge that they need and support they need to do their job. Or it's on a self-service portal, or it could be on a website, or it could be in a collaboration tool like Teams. Make the knowledge accessible from where they work so that they can quickly get an answer. And then last, be sure you can measure your knowledge success, because looking at the analytics of who's asking what questions, what knowledge you're using, and then when you have analytics on a knowledge experience, you can see where people go along the flow and where they may stop or where you have successes, and it allows you to tune that knowledge so that you can better address your market. And again, what we highly recommend is you don't boil the ocean. You don't try to create these knowledge experiences for everything. You start with those high volume problems that you need to provide solutions for and get those into a really nice experience so that you can address those and eliminate those from your service desk. What we typically see is about 30% reduction in calls based on the right kind of self-help experience. I'll hand it back over to you, Roy, for the next building block.
Thank you. And building block number 3, or C, as I used in my little illustrations there. Automate the obvious. I remember Doug Tedder, who's one of our faculty members at HDI, teaches a lot of our courses, and also is a brilliant presenter who was just at Service Management World last week. Automate the obvious is what Doug says in terms of where you start. So the illustration I use is a little robot dog. Well, where would you start automation processes on a robot dog? And the answer is make the tail wag, because it's the simplest thing to do. So look at your organization, review what you're doing, and start looking for the really simple, repetitive stuff that you can automate and apply some technologies to, and get that automation started. Once you have the prioritizations chosen, then you can start applying this intelligent automation to help you as you go. So automate wherever you can, but use caution. And the reason to use caution on this is that automated things work really well, but they don't deviate from how they're constructed, how they're planned, and how they flow. If I design into a system that has a bad outcome, well, guess what? You're going to get a bad outcome really fast. So automation does exactly what you tell it to do, and if you tell it to do something wrong, it will do it wrong every single time. So just recently, there was a Facebook outage. Facebook was off the air for a while, and the reason for that was an automated task that went awry. It was programmed to do something that put it into a loop that eventually they just had to pull the plug on Facebook to get it to stop. So assess and streamline your processes. Make sure that every step is good before you start to pushing the button to make it go. And John is going to go into what we mean by intelligent automation a little bit more, but there you go.
Yeah, and really, intelligent automation is using the latest in technologies. It could be AI or other algorithms that you build in your environment to automate things, to take the human out of the equation, and then mainly on the repetitive tasks, so that we can focus our staff on the more high-value tasks. And one of the matrices I like to share with people when we're talking about, okay, because the big question always is, where do we start? Because there's a lot of things that we can automate. There's a lot of things we can build self-service for. Where do we start? And there's an awesome book called The Best Service is No Service. And it was really written by a gentleman from Amazon, and they really studied this problem years ago and talked about how they really could execute on a shift left strategy and take all the costs out of supporting their customers. And of course, they've got a big customer problem with millions of customers, very complex product set. And so they come up with this matrix that I think is very valuable for even IT, and it's called their value to internet matrix. And it really is looking at what is the value to the customer, to the employee, or whoever you're supporting, and then what's the value to you as a business entity, whether it's IT or the business in general. And there's two axes. And you really look at prioritization where you focus based on this matrix. So if you start in the lower left-hand corner, the things that are very low value for a customer, they're just irritating, and they're very low value for IT. They're irritating to work on. It may be a problematic app. It could be some kind of equipment that's outdated, whatever. Those are the things you really need to eliminate because they're causing calls and they're causing support dollars to go towards things that are not driving value for the customer or the business. So you really need to use root cause analysis and the typical ITIL type processes to figure out where those things are and what's the solution, whether it's reprogramming, replacing an app, or whatever, and get those out of your organization so that you can eliminate those calls and eliminate those support requests. And if you move to the right, high value to a customer, in other words, they really deem this as an important interaction with you. It may be low value to IT because, hey, it may be a password reset or, other things that you do on a repetitive basis, but it's high value for the person that needs it when they need it. You really need to look at automating those with self-service so that people can get to those quickly, get the answer, solve those problems. They're happy. You're driving up satisfaction because it's high value to them, and you're not having to deal with it because it's really low value to you to even be touching those kind of problems. These are your highly repetitive kind things that a lot of customers would ask you for. And if you upper left-hand corner, it's high value to you because it will reduce your cost and complexity, and maybe it's low value to the customer, but those are the things you really want to simplify in your infrastructure so that your operations and support are more streamlined and easier for your organization to support. Those are more IT-centric kind of things that you would want to simplify. And then the upper right-hand corner, there's really no automation there. This is really, it's high value for you to talk to the customer. So, you know, there might be areas where you would want to talk to the people that are calling in, because there may be so much information that you need to gather that it may be high value for you to talk to them and help resolve the issue faster, rather than trying to push them to self-service, it failing, and then them calling back and being irritated. So there's really, this matrix is an excellent way to approach the problem, a prioritization of automation, and how you adapt in your organization. And what we've seen is companies that take a very measured approach can lower their Tier 1 costs by 30% pretty easily if they take this approach. They can also improve time to resolution by 20% just by providing more knowledge for their support staff. And they also can reduce the time to onboard your support staff by having that knowledge that they can lean on as they're coming up to speed. So there's a lot of value to automation and knowledge that can really be gleaned from this kind of approach. And I really highly recommend, again, not boil the ocean, but take this very pragmatic approach and have a very structured approach for each spot on the matrix. And I'd highly recommend reading the book if you're really interested in transforming your support organization, because it provides a lot of good examples, proven examples of how Amazon has been able to achieve tremendous results in this area. I'll hand it back over to you, Roy.
Sure, and I think, John, following on from that, one of the things that we have to keep in mind in terms of providing a reasonable and good or excellent experience to those who depend on us for support is that we compete with not just the last time they called support or the last company they worked at. We compete with everybody, right? We're used to those Amazon experiences now. We're used to being able to fire up a smartphone and get something we want right now. And so that's what people expect. It's not even necessarily what they are reaching for. It's what they expect from you. They expect ease. And so it's really important to get that experience right. And I just also wanted to touch on one thing, too. As you go through these steps with prioritizing automation that John talked about, one thing you're going to have to pay attention to is that your metrics are going to totally change. I mean, let's face it, the service desk is driven by metrics. So when you think about moving so much stuff, shifting left, moving solutions and resolutions out to where the customers can actually affect these things themselves, what happens to your first call or first contact resolution? What happens to first level resolution? Because your first level people are going to be much more challenged by more difficult. When you take the easy stuff out of it, the more difficult stuff is what's left. Now also, in addition, and John touched on it a little bit, is that you will have the luxury of spending more time with your customers because of the removal of a lot of those repetitive tasks. Is it going to remove all the repetitive tasks? Absolutely not. Not going to happen. And we should mention also that self-service is not a solution in every single case, but certainly can remove a good portion of the repetitive tasks that we all just love to do, right? Those one-and-done calls that we could have done with an email that we get over and over and over again because our systems provide less than perfect guidance for folks. So it's important to bear in mind that this really does change the complexion of what we do, and our metrics are going to reflect that. So be prepared for some changes in your metrics. So moving on to the fourth building block, artificial intelligence. Boy, is that the buzzword of 2019. As I mentioned earlier, AI requires abundant data. The more data it has to munch on, the better it gets, the more it knows. And so AI is is everywhere. It's behind things that we don't even think about anymore, but there it is. It is tapping into data resources all over the place. And when you think about the number of data resources and the amount of data that you have in your organization, just think about, your CMDB, if you have one, and maybe that's another place that needs to get put in order, right? It's hard. CMDB is probably the hardest thing you're going to do in terms of service management, but there it is. Your ITSM tool has tremendous amounts of information in it. Who calls? What did they call about? How often did they call? What was the solution? Did it come from a knowledge base? Did it not come from a knowledge base? Who resolved it? All of that information is already there in your ITSM tool, right? And to set AI to munch on that is a very fruitful enterprise. And AI can assist and augment your staff by providing real-time information. And some examples of this are, there's a couple of organizations that I'm aware of where they actually, their artificial intelligence talks to the analysts while they're on the phone. So their headset will say, ask them this question, to try to assist them in what they're doing based on that history of what's happened before. So again, extracting data from all over the organization and bringing it to bear. It can expedite routing. Who resolved this particular issue the last 15 times? Oh, it's that group of people. Well, then why not route it right to them and get that taken care of? Can improve the customer experience. How? Well, first way is faster. People want things faster and more exact and more consistent. So that's one big way that AI can certainly help. In addition to assisting us with providing them knowledge, it can help us provide the resolutions as well by giving us the information, the knowledge that we need when we're on this side of the screen attempting to assist them in what they do, because it can know things that we can't figure out in a very short period of time. So improving the customer experience, which, by the way, is pretty much the number one reason that anybody does anything these days, is one of the stats that I mentioned at our conference is that customer experience is driving an awful lot of business decisions, as it should. So improving the customer experience is a very, very good thing. And we'll move along, John. Augmentation.
Sure. So, AI has obviously got a lot of promise. It's a big field, a lot of different aspects of AI that will be integrated into every software application that you use, and also can be used within the IT organization to do a lot of things. What we'll talk about today is AI augmentation, specifically conversational AI. So how do we use AI to better assist someone looking for service? And then intelligent automation, how do we use algorithms and AI to do things for us? And there's like 4 areas that I blocked out here. First, context. Understand the situation to better inform the user. So when, AI can be used to augment the situation by understanding the user's role, what business domain they're in, the assets that they control or own, the known errors related to the issue that they have, incidents, problems or changes that are associated with what they're specifically coming in for. So all those things can be part of contextual experience. So when they enter a knowledge self-service experience, it should know what their role is. It should know what business domain, what building they work in. It should be able to query and find out what assets they own. It should know if there's open tickets already. So there's a lot of things that can happen that's part of the building a context so that you can deliver the right answers for them in a more relevant way. So that's one area that AI augmentation can help. Another is assistance. So AI can be used to assist processes like impact assessment. You're going to make a change in the IT infrastructure, doing an impact assessment, or providing knowledge to, this guided knowledge experience to guide people through assistance with some kind of troubleshooting or resolution. Also, translation is another example. These are just examples of the way So in our product with self-help, we have the ability, using AI, to automatically translate any of the knowledge that we provide to any other language. So as they're going through the knowledge experience, they're going into their native language, and we're using AI to translate that on the fly. So that's a pretty important capability. And then NLP, obviously natural language processing. When people interact or search for something or interact with a virtual agent, you need to be able to translate that into something that makes the results more relevant. So that's natural language processing. All these are AI capabilities that can be adapted. Around that area of action, so when you're providing self-service, you not only want to provide knowledge, but you might need to be able to take action. So you might be able to, if you don't find a resolution, create a ticket or pull in customer information based on some of the context that you have about them. So you want to be able to, update with an external system or pull data from an external system. You may want to do assignments, like Roy said. A problem comes in, you want to be able to sign it to the right group to get the quickest resolution possible. You might use AI to look at the incidents and escalate. And then smart interactions. So again, this is an example of a virtual agent or in a collaboration tool, being able to have autoresponders to certain kind of requests that come in. So there's a lot of ways that AI is being built to support that. And then the last area, obviously, is interface. So being able to interface with those key systems to drive value, whether it's ITSM, AI ops, enterprise applications, or some kind of request fulfillment. Because, an example workflow might be someone is in Teams and they need a new keyboard. They might be able to just ask the virtual agent within Teams, hey, I need a new keyboard. It may come up and ask them questions like, what kind of computer, what kind of connection do you need? Do you need a USB? What kind of keyboard do you want? And then be able to go out to a request fulfillment in the ITSM and actually order that on your behalf, and then be able to report back to you the request number, and that's the end of the transaction. So that's using the combination of AI and this knowledge experience to solve a real business problem quickly. And again, I think these are the things that will drive adoption. When it becomes easy for people to get access to the answers they need or the tools that they need that easy, it will drive adoption up. So as we talk about,
John, if I can jump in for a second.
Sure.
We have another question here. It says, we've implemented a self-help password reset tool for about a year. How can we engage our users to start using, who have enrolled in the tool but still call the service desk? And the reason I jumped in with that question here is that you just mentioned it becoming easier. Usually the people who go around a tool that they have or a system that they've been offered is because it's easier for them to do that. So the first thing to do would be engage them in a conversation and say, well, why don't you use the tool? And it might be with I can never remember my security questions, or it's too hard for me to get to this. I don't use a computer more than once a week, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So engage in a conversation with them and try to extract what the reason and what's making it more difficult for them to use the tool than it is to call the service desk. And maybe explain some things to them like, well, every call to the service desk takes, whatever time your average handle time is, and how they might be backing up queues for other folks while they're doing it, in a nice way. But explain to them that these things take time, and it might not be the most effective thing for them to do, to be on hold while the company needs them to be doing something else.
Yeah, we just did a project like this where they had to call a password reset, and one of the things that we did is we built a knowledge experience that helped them enroll in the password reset facility first of all, and then drove them down the path of using it, and then the service desk would actually send out a link to this experience when they called in the first time and said, I need you to here try this first. And it's a change management issue, and you really need to provide them an easy to follow, guided experience, kind of get them through those issues, and just like you said, just to make it easier.
Yep.
Just real quick, I don't want to spend a lot of time because we're running out of time, but conversational AI. So one of the key things that are happening today, another evolution of AI is, you hear a lot about chatbots and virtual agents. It's really, the advantage to that is that you can use a virtual agent and NLP technologies, natural language processing, to better understand what the person is looking for so that you can match it up, and the virtual agent will be good at understanding all the knowledge that's available and be able to provide the most relevant solution for their problem. And if there's not a problem, take them directly and create a ticket for them. Collect some information, create a ticket on their behalf so that the service desk will have all the information they need to start working on a problem immediately. So again, AI is another level of augmentation that allows you to interact with your users in an automated way. And I know a lot of people may not want to interact with that, but in the end, it will help drive down your ticket volumes if you can get the right kind of virtual agent working that's very specific to the knowledge around what you're supporting in your organization. Roy, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Yep, sure thing. And just to kind of review here, here's the 4 building blocks. So we started with knowledge management, building the foundation that everything else sits on, right? Your efficiency sits on it, your accelerated time to proficiency sits on it, the ability to feed the correct information into your new systems that you're going to be using this technology to implement. Then moving on to self-help, which is naturally falls out of that knowledge management and provides a way for people to get the answers they need, find the resolutions they need in an effective and efficient manner. And what we talked about a lot today was providing that experience in a way that wants to draw people in. It gives them an experience along the lines of, the major providers like Google, like Amazon, and lets them help themselves in a way that they really want to do. Intelligent automation, right? Not just automation, but intelligent automation, putting some of that technology to use to look for opportunities for automation and do it the right way, to make sure that we have the processes working properly and providing the resolutions and the systems that work the way we want them to. And finally, artificial intelligence in all its areas like natural language processing and also machine learning. Let's not forget that portion of AI, right? Every time it gets used and find something out there that's a different component or another component or an optional component of the resolution that we're looking for, it brings it into that. So the machines can learn as they go, and we're using machines in a very figurative term here. The software can learn as it goes and pick new things up, bring in elements from different areas and apply them into the artificial intelligence so that the resolutions get better and better and better as time goes on. And I think, John, you just have a couple of things to wrap it up?
Yeah. When we look at modernizing the service desk, I got one illustration here that kind of ties it together for us. First it starts with knowledge. We made that very clear. You really have to have knowledge to really provide a self-service or to deflect those tickets. And it's really about providing guided knowledge experience, so more of a workflow style, being able to interact with the user, collect information, and guide them down the path to find that bite-sized knowledge that will help them. It can be FAQs, it can be help for things, it could be request fulfillment kind of actions, it can be instructions on how to do things, it can be job aids. So there's tons of application of the types of knowledge that you can provide, but that's the center. Also, you need the ability to do automated actions, so we don't want to leave any dead ends. So if we don't find an answer to what they're looking for, be able to create a ticket in the ITSM or be able to go out and interact with other applications through Microsoft Flow or other integration capabilities to take action in other systems, bring information in, or to take action on your behalf, part of the knowledge experience. And if we build this out, the end game is really about once we've got these knowledge experiences created, then it's about making them available everywhere, whether it's on a website, self-service portal, within an application, on a messaging platform, wherever they are, make the knowledge searchable and accessible from those places that people work. And then add on it, when we start talking about AI, another level would be the virtual agent. So virtual agents can live anywhere. Create a virtual agent for domain of information. It can be an IT support virtual agent. It could be an HR virtual agent to answer all your questions about HR. So there's a lot of applications to this. Once you've got the knowledge experiences built, is in syndicating them wherever people work. And that's the key. Self-service is not a place. It's a capability that you need to provide everywhere people work, whether it's through a virtual agent, through portals, or through search technology, being able to find these knowledge experiences. And I think the power is the combination of these technologies, because once you've combined these and you make it easy for people to find the answers to the common problems that they have, they will use that. They will use it again and again and again, and they will share with others. And I think that you really can get a lot of benefit. And we've got case studies where people have easily reduced their inbound calls by 30% just by focusing on those high volume kind of problems that people want to solve, whether they're typical requests, or answers to problems that they want to solve. So I think the powerful combination of these technologies, knowledge, self-service, self-help, and then AI is just a truly transforming capability for IT service desk organizations.
Well
so
said.
We want to move on to some questions in the last.
I particularly like, John, what you said there about self-service not being a place. I think that's really the difference between what traditionally we've thought of as self-help, self-service, and what we're talking about here, which is a different way of doing it. So yeah, we've got some questions. Here's a good one. The service desk I work at is a fairly large knowledge base, but it's built upon the SOPs for various tools they support. Secondly, there are many how-tos in the knowledge base. They're step-by-step for the service desk to use tools and they have access to in order to resolve a problem. Any recommendations on how to convert this to a more customer-friendly interface, allowing this knowledge base to be used by the customer as well as the service desk for potential AI? Yeah, boy, we could have an entire webinar on that topic, couldn't we, John?
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
one of the first things you've got to look at is you've got to review what's there, and you've got to think about what kind of methodology you want to use. And one of the things you might want to think about is a knowledge-centered service that can really help you capture things in the language of the customer as opposed to those SOPs, because that's a killer. That's one of the biggest reasons that people don't adopt self-help, self-service right there, is because it's not in their language. They don't know what you mean by a certain particular technical term. They don't understand that. So even if they get the answer back by some miracle, searching on a term that has nothing to do with what's in your knowledge base, if they get an answer back for it, they're not going to understand what to do. So it really attacked that language, and think about a knowledge methodology. And we did a substantial report recently on knowledge management. It's in HDI Connect. You can find it under our research and resources. You might want to take a look at that as well. John, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you hit some very valid points. Number one, I would say go back to the prioritization. So you have to really look at the knowledge that you have and the common issues and problems that people call in with, and focus on those that are high value for the customer. So that means the high number of calls. So you focus on those first, and you break it down into bite-sized information that's very written for the consumer to make it easy for them to follow the path to resolving their issue. It's better for them to access less information that's written in their language and to access verbose knowledge articles that are not written in their language. So again, it is a process, but I think that if it's prioritized right, it's not overwhelming. Again, don't boil the ocean. Focus on the high-value ones and the ones that you get a lot of calls for, because really what the goal at the end of the day is to deflect as many tickets quickly as possible. So again, focus on those, and then have a regular rhythm of, okay, we're going to migrate so many more over to this way of of delivering knowledge.
Thank you so much, John. We really appreciate you being here, and thank you very much to Easy Vista for sponsoring today's webinar. We really appreciate it, and we hope that you folks got some value out of it. Don't forget to download the slide deck. This will be available on demand very shortly. And this webcast is copyright 2019 by Informa Tech. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by HDI, which is solely responsible for its content, and the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and opinions. On behalf of HDI, thanks for your time, and have a great day.